You are now listening to the War Report Podcast Network.
For the first time as Auburn's head coach, Hugh Freeze is struggling on the recruiting trail. I'll tell you why that's happening and what the Tigers need to do to get that turned around on this edition of the Uptempo Podcast. Yes, sir. What is up to my Auburn family? Hello to my up-tempo gang. As always, I'm your host, Dustin Smith. Today's topic is going to be Auburn football recruiting. It's just not been what we've become used to since Hugh Freeze took over as Auburn's head coach a few years ago. There's a reason why that is happening. I want to get into that, and I'll finish it off in the second segment of the episode telling you why it's not all doomsday, but there are some things the Tigers got to do to get the commitments rolling back in, to get back into that top 10 that we know Hugh Freeze is capable of having Auburn in these recruiting rankings. But right now, it's not doing good. Looking at 247, Auburn is currently 60th. That is correct. Auburn is 60th. This is Brian Harsin level bad in the current recruiting rankings. When you look at the teams that are ahead of Auburn right now, there's really no excuse. Only 6 commitments, and as I record this a couple hours ago, a long-time commitment of Auburn's 2026 class, 4-star linebacker out of Mobile, Alabama, Sedarius Tootle, flips to Georgia. This is why this is big to me. One, there was a lot of noise a few weeks ago about Tootle flipping to Georgia, but Auburn got the last visit. Being the team that courted him first, being the team that first believed in Sedarius Tootle, kind of extending that first big offer to him and him committing early because he is from a very small private school in Mobile. Being that first team really helped Auburn out, and Sedarius being committed to Auburn said, I'm going to give the school I'm committed to, the school that I have liked the most for the longest time of this process, I'm going to give them the last visit. So he's trending to Georgia, goes to Auburn for the last visit, and everything that I heard behind the scenes and what was put out publicly. I mean, he made a public statement saying Auburn's back in the number 1 spot. So I'm sure that Hugh Freeze on to victory. Everybody involved in the recruiting of Sedarius Tootle felt like, okay, we're in good footing here. He went to Georgia. They wined and dined him. You know, you got to listen when Georgia calls, and if you go visit them and they really want you and they make a push, obviously you got to consider it. But Auburn felt like we got him back in here. Last visit before the dead period, we got this thing wrapped up. And then the news comes out today that, you know what, Sedarius is actually going to flip to Georgia. It's a big loss for Auburn. And it's a big loss for Auburn when you look at just a couple of days ago, Garrett, your 4-star linebacker who originally was from Gulf Shores. There was some noise about him transferring up to Auburn High. That never happened. When that didn't happen, I kind of felt like there may be a decommitment coming. He moves out to Louisiana. I'm not really sure what's going on there with that whole kid's whole situation. But ultimately, Jermichael Garrett, another big-time recruit for Auburn, he decommits. So that's 2 4-star linebackers in the span of a week that have decommitted for Auburn. Now, I want to be fair. Today, Jeffrey Lee over at Auburn on 3 did put in a prediction for a 4-star Jarquez Wilkes, 4-star edge, to commit to Auburn. So, and that would be a nice win. I like Jarquez's game. Even if that happens, though, it still would leave Auburn with only 7 commitments, and it's not going to bump you too far off of that 60th rating. Vodney Cleveland on Friday, a big defensive lineman that Auburn made a big-time push for. He goes to Texas. He decides to commit to Texas. So, really, and there's been some noise about some other guys. Devon Carter, the 4-star wide receiver that's been committed to Auburn for a little bit. There's been some noise about him flipping. Now, he made a similar statement to what Tootle made. He came in for a visit, and he said, you know, I've seen everything I need to see from Auburn. They're still my number 1. But, you know, again, similar to Tootle, he says that, but there's also noise out there about a possible flip coming with that one. So Auburn right now really kind of spinning their tires, trying to gain some traction on this recruiting front. And when we look at it, we're going to have to ask why. Like, why is Auburn here? And a lot of people are probably listening or are watching on YouTube going, well, you know why, Dustin? No, duh. It's because of the on-the-field performance. We had our guy Kyle Rush on, a.k.a. the Charlie 5. If you haven't checked that episode out, go check it out. We had him on last week, and we talked about this. There is an initial honeymoon phase when a new coach comes into an SEC program. So, and for Auburn, it was a perfect storm. You had a guy in Brian Harsin who didn't put in the effort to recruit, so the money guys weren't behind him because they didn't believe in him. And he didn't have the chops to, even if he did put out the effort, it would have helped him more. But Harsin never had the chops to recruit the SEC, even if he did put out the effort. There was always going to be a ceiling to it. Hugh Freeze has the chops. So it was like this perfect storm where Harsin didn't really try. So the money wasn't put forth from the money people. And then you go get a guy who is all about putting forth effort on the recruiting trail in Hugh Freeze, and he has the chops to do it. He's one of the best in the game. And then you have the momentum of the money guys getting behind him and saying, okay, let's drop the bags now. We want to go in and build these top classes. So Hugh comes in, bad situation in like a month or two to finalize the class, brings that class up from 50th, 60th, 70th, wherever it was when Harsin got fired, up into the top 20. Most places had Auburn between 15th and 18th. In that first, I don't want to call it Hugh's first class, but the first one that he kind of got to sign on as head coach. Then in his first full class and his second full class in his first 2 years, he brings in top 10 talent with high-end guys. I mean, if Keldrick Falk has a big year this year, he's a top first-round NFL pick. Connor Lew, a very high pick. If Kayan Lee reaches that next level, very high pick. Kim Coleman fulfills his potential. He'll be a first-round NFL pick. We got some dudes, right? So not only those class has depth and they had a lot of talent in them, but you have some really top-end talent. You really went and got some ballers. So Hugh Freeze did a great job in those first couple of seasons, but there's that initial honeymoon phase. And I'm going to take you back to New Mexico State year one. If you guys remember, if you guys are longtime listeners, I really went off after that loss. And I got a lot of pushback from it. A lot of the pushback I received was people saying things like, well, Saban lost to Louisiana Monroe in year one. What about Mike Norvell losing it early on to Jacksonville State at Florida? You know, all of these losses that these coaches that went on to have some success, their first year, their second year, whatever, they suffered some tough losses trying to gain footing at their big-time programs. My whole point was, well, Auburn got blown off the field. Like, didn't even look like they belonged on the field with New Mexico State. And that loss, although maybe it didn't have, everyone was pissed in the moment, but I always felt like you won't see the effects of that loss until somewhere down the line. Unless Hugh Freeze comes out the next season and puts together some wins in the way those other coaches did to erase that. Of course, everyone is going to forget somewhat about Alabama losing to UL Monroe when Saban goes on to have the greatest run in college football history. But that was never really realistic for Auburn or Hugh Freeze to do, right? But you still could have erased it with an 8-4 or a 9-3 last year, and you felt like things were going the other direction. But if you move all the wins and the losses all into one side, if you split them down the middle, right? Obviously, the disappointing losses side has got way more chips in it at this point, 2 years in, than the exciting win side. What's the exciting win? Texas A&M at home. And look, that was a big win. And it shows you the importance of one big win. There's a possibility Deuce Knight may have ended up going to Ole Miss. You could have lost some of those guys that were kind of wavering if Auburn would have blown that lead versus Texas A&M. Auburn was up 21-0 in that game, and it took multiple overtimes for Auburn to pull it out. Ultimately, Auburn finally getting a win versus a ranked team and the crowd storming the field and it being at night and the atmosphere at Junior Stadium, Hugh Freeze was able to put the final touches on last year's class with that win and say, this is it, guys. Here's the example of things going in the right direction. I know we left some things on the table earlier this year, but please just take a look at this one. But that was it. Because he had put in so much work in that 26 class, and those relationships were so good. He was so far along in those recruitments that win was enough to lock a lot of those up. But then you come out the next week in the Iron Bowl, And, the loss in the Iron Bowl wasn't as devastating in terms of a game where you felt like you should have won it, like the Cal and the Arkansas and in those games earlier in the season, the Oklahoma game. But Alabama did turn the ball over 4 times. You did have some really goofy play calls, the Jarquez pass that got intercepted and all that. Like, Auburn shot themselves in the foot every time they were moving the football in that game with coaching decisions, with play calling, and all of that kind of stuff. So 2 years in, you're 24, 25 games into this Hugh Freeze experiment, and the scale is heavily tilted in one direction. And that direction is the bad losses outweigh the good wins by a wide margin. And at this point, those losses carry weight. New Mexico State matters now for these 2026 kids. It's a stain on the record that Hugh hasn't been able to erase. Instead of erasing it, he's actually added more stains. Blowing a game versus Cal, blowing a game versus Arkansas, blowing a game versus Oklahoma, blowing a game versus Vanderbilt, blowing a game versus Missouri, blowing the Iron Bowl. I mean, as tough as the New Mexico State game was, in that first year, the very next week, you have Alabama 4th and goal from the plus 30-yard line. And all you got to do is knock the ball down. And you can't do that. And you don't get to that point if you don't make the mistake of putting the wrong number 0 onto the field. You thought you had Keontae Scott going out there. You put Coy Moore to go out there instead because you got the numbers mixed up on the punt return. And he drops the ball. It was just such a colossal disaster. So much dysfunction, disorganization. And it is stacked up. It's not a one-off. They're stacked up, man. So if you're somebody that's listening to this saying, Dustin, well, I still believe in Hugh Freeze and you're being too hard, I hear you. I'll take you back to when Auburn hired Hugh Freeze. I thought this was the one, man. At least I got to get Auburn back to being competitive and winning 8, 9 ball games a season. I'm shocked we're here. This is not what I was expecting. But we have to be realistic. You want to know why Auburn's 60th in recruiting right now? All those losses. Because Hugh Freeze has to acknowledge in interviews with Mike G. He has to acknowledge in interviews with the Next Round Live that there's a win total he's got to get to. And once you start having to acknowledge that, once you start having to say, yes, I have put myself in a position to where I have to win a certain amount of games this year. And year 3 has to look a certain way, or I won't be back for a year 4. Once you start saying that, the Vodney Clevelands of the world, they'll visit you because Hugh Freeze can recruit. Because he can build a relationship, because Auburn has the resources, because Auburn puts guys in the pros, because the Auburn fan base shows up and shows out and creates an awesome atmosphere, because Auburn has the history, has the nostalgia, because you want to come play. You got Georgia at night this year in Jordan Hare Stadium. Recruits want to play in that game. You could have the Iron Bowl at night this year. Recruits want to play in that game. But they don't want to play in that game as Auburn being 5 and 6 every year rolling into it, man. That's got to stop. They've seen it for far too long. Since Auburn lost to Florida State in the national championship next year, Auburn has, in 2013, Auburn has lost at least 4 games every single year since that point. At least 4 games since the 2013 season ended. Think about that. These kids are 18 years old, man. That means the majority of their life, Auburn has lost at least 4 games. And for the last 4 years, hasn't even had a winning season. Doesn't have a big win in there. The culture of losing is built up to this point for Auburn, where this nostalgia that a lot of us, that are over 30 years old remember from Auburn, these kids don't know about Cadillac. Hell, they don't remember Cam Newton. So, as Auburn fans, we know the history of it. We have this built-up pride. But a class of 2026 high school senior, he wants to go win some football games, man. And I give Hugh Freeze credit. He only swings for the big cats. He only wants to go get the big guys, right? The top recruits. I mean, you credit to him for trying to go get a Vodney Cleveland. In the first 2 years, he got a lot of those kind of guys. He won a lot of those battles. But as the bad losses continue to stack up and the scale of bad losses heavily outweighs good wins, Auburn's going to finish second and third in a lot of recruiting battles. Now, there's a flip side to this. And for anybody listening that's pissed off, I had somebody comment, and I put out a really general statement on X today, just saying, hey, you know what it is, man? Like what I'm saying right now. If Auburn wins games, they'll finish with a lot of flips and a flurry of recruits will commit at the end of the season. If they don't win games and it's another losing year, Auburn will probably be looking for a new head coach, and you'll have a lot bigger problems, right? And somebody commented underneath immediately and said, Hugh Freeze is playing out his 5 years no matter what happens. That's not true. That's not true. I want to be optimistic. I want to believe that Auburn is going to get things turned around this year, right? But if that doesn't happen, Hugh Freeze is out. Like, make no mistake about this. You don't start off at any SEC program, maybe outside of Vanderbilt, with 3 losing seasons in a row and get a 4th year. That's unrealistic. That's not going to be the case. So if whoever left that comment is watching the show, respectfully, I disagree. That's not going to happen at Auburn. And it'll never happen at Auburn. The day that becomes acceptable at Auburn, Auburn has much bigger issues. But there is an opportunity here. In the same way that Billy Napier, I've said this a lot in these last couple episodes, was down in the recruiting. Boosters were meeting to get his buyout money ready. Winning fixes everything, man. Winning fixes all. And here's the good news for Hugh Freeze. Here's the good news for Auburn on the recruiting trail. Hugh Freeze knows how to do it. Hugh Freeze knows how to recruit. He's put a staff together of excellent recruiters. And I think that Hugh Freeze takes losing recruiting battles personally. I think that this summer has probably embarrassed him as much as the losses do, because I know how serious he takes acquiring talent, how highly he thinks of himself, rightfully so, as a recruiter. Because it's not his recruiting chops, it's not his inability to recruit that has Auburn 60th in the recruiting rankings right now. It's the product he's put together on the field. And guys looking at it and say, I got to see it, man. It's been 2 bad years. Year 3, I got to see it. If he does that, if Hugh Freeze gets to 8 wins, I have all the confidence in the world Auburn finishes with a top 12 class. Now, right now it's 60th. I don't know, like, you're going to have to do a lot of flips. And Auburn's definitely behind the 8 ball here. This might not be the class that Hugh brought in the first 2 years, and he's put himself in that position. But if he gets to 8 wins, certainly the more, if it's 9 or 10 and Auburn makes the playoffs, then obviously top 10, top 5 type class with the way he's able to recruit and the resources that Auburn has with On to Victory and all the kind of stuff that goes into that. But for me, I think the big thing is perception. These guys just look at Auburn football for what it is. It's a losing culture. And elite, talented guys that are being recruited by the Georgias of the world, man, they don't want to go play in a losing culture. So how do you change that? It's simple. Everyone knows how simple it is. What Auburn did versus A&M, making those plays to win the game, you got to stack those together. You're not going to win every game. You're going to have losses in the SEC when you're playing elite competition that are heartbreaking, that are tough. But you can't leave half of your losses feeling like you left the game on the table, that your lack of execution is what cost you the game, that you shot yourself in the foot, that a head coach forgot that a 2-minute warning existed and called a timeout with 2:02 on the clock in a 1-possession game in the 4th quarter. You can't do that anymore. It's costing Auburn right now. You're seeing the ripple effects of bad losses. And this is why I get so passionate after bad losses. after losses where Auburn shot themselves in the foot. Painful, like one of the more painful losses as an Auburn fan is the recent one, right? The Florida Final Four game in basketball. Go back and watch my reaction to that, the reaction show. I'm hurt that Auburn wasn't able to pull it out, but I'm not upset at the team. I don't feel like the team let us down or that head coaching was the reason Auburn lost. They lost to a better team that made the plays in the clutch. It is what it is. That happens. But that Vanderbilt game, that Oklahoma game, that Arkansas game, New Mexico State, all these losses, those are pathetic. And maybe if like you had one or two of them, okay, but you've got 5, 6, 7 of them in 2 years. Of course, kids aren't going to commit to that, man. Of course, it's going to be hard to keep. If Georgia's coming after a 4-star linebacker and you're out here in interviews having to, and I'm not mad at Hugh for acknowledging that he's on the hot seat. He has to. He's an honest guy. He'll do it. If he's out here acknowledging that, of course, it's going to be hard to keep a 4-star linebacker that Georgia's pursuing and really wants to get. It's going to be hard to keep that guy in the boat. Now, commitments aren't really commitments. And Tootle obviously has a high affection for Auburn. So as an example of what Auburn can do, beat Georgia. Invite Tootle to the game. Beat Georgia. Beat him in front of them. Make him think about it. But Auburn has to change the losing culture. Because anybody under the age of 30 thinks of Auburn as a mid to losing culture. And they're not wrong, because that's what it's been for some time. More of, and the game itself, kind of sucky, but that second game of Hugh Freeze's tenure versus Cal, he let us know, right, that he was the one that called the touchdown play to Valdo that won the game. There's got to be more of that, making the right call, making the clutch call in the clutch moment to pull out a dub. There's got to be a lot more of that. Not forgetting when the 2-minute warning is, or you're running the ball down Oklahoma's throat and you put the ball in your quarterback's hand who you know is mistake prone, and there's a miscommunication versus Georgia on a 4th and 1 that you got to have. All of that stuff, Missouri's quarterback being out for 2.5 quarters and you can't even score in that time. So eventually their starter comes back out after getting a shot and puts together one drive to beat you because that's all he needed. All that crap's got to go, man. It's got to go. You got to start making the clutch plays. Keontae Lambert-Smith going up and making that catch in overtime versus Texas A&M. There's got to be more of that. And again, you won't always make that play. But our guys over at the War Report just did a show this past Sunday, about the top moments in Auburn history over the last 20, 25 years. There's a lot of great moments there. Now, there's painful losses in there too, for sure, right? We could talk about like 5 just in Baton Rouge in the last 25 years. So you're not going to always pull it out in this league. There's other great teams. There's other great players, other great coaches. They're going to have their moments as well. But you got to pull out some. It can't always be a devastating loss. And Auburn's got to see the ball go through the hoop, man. Auburn's got to see the ball go through the hoop. You got to start putting together dubs. You got to go to Baylor week 1 and find a way to win a football game. And then, as crazy as this sounds, but, again, a 31-10 blowout versus New Mexico State will make you wonder, if you do beat Baylor week 1, you better come out and handle business versus South Alabama and Ball State the next 2 weeks and get to 3-0. Stop being so mentally fragile and folding at the worst times. You got to cancel this losing culture that is built up for really over a decade. It's really been steady building and building and building and building, to where I actually see a lot of apathy inside the Auburn fan base, where people are kind of checked out. Like, yeah, man, it is what it is. That's a dangerous spot to be in. It really is. I really sort of saw our fan base get fatigued last year. People were hitting me up saying, I'm just tired of driving to Jordan Hare Stadium to watch us blow games every week. It gets old. And if it gets old to you, these high school recruits are watching. And their head coaches are watching going, come here, son. Who's all recruiting you? Georgia, Bama, Texas. Yeah. Why don't you go to one of those schools where you can win some football games? That's just what it is. That's just what it is. So if you're Auburn, if you're Hugh Freeze, everything's in place. Auburn knows how to recruit. Hugh Freeze knows how to recruit. It's all about the on the field, man. It's all about changing the perception. Auburn's got to change the perception because the national media perception, the perception within the SEC media, and even the Auburn space, even the Auburn media space, is that here we go again. Auburn's going to find a way to lose. And that's what these recruits see. That's what these recruits feel. And if you want them to get on board moving forward, you've got to show that culture is being killed. That you're chopping the head off of that. Auburn's done so many things right these last 2 years behind the scenes and acquiring talent in the NIL space, in the new scoreboard and the new football facility. There are so many things that Auburn has done to position itself to get back right to where it belongs in football. And then the fourth quarter comes in a close game and they find a way to job it up. So, of course, it's affecting recruiting. But it can change easily. And it can change quick. Go to Baylor, pull out a dub. Find yourself in a dogfight week 4 in Norman, Oklahoma, and find a way to pull that dub out. Beat Georgia at home in front of what I'm sure will be a stacked recruiting list. Start the season off 5-1, 4-2, and then rattle off in that second stretch a nice little winning streak. Get into that Iron Bowl with 2 losses, 3 losses, something like that. Start to change that perception. Win some of those battles. You're going to be in some battles. Baylor probably going to be a battle. Oklahoma, A&M, those will be battles. Georgia at home. Last time Auburn had Georgia at home, they should have won the damn game. Probably will be a battle. Change the culture, man. Find a way to make the play. And I'm sure Auburn will have a heartbreaking loss or 2 this year. But there's got to be some exciting wins in there as well. It can't be so one-sided, man. And as long as Auburn continues to find ways to lose games until they change that perception, the perception is the reality. I mean, that's the reality. It's a losing culture. Until Auburn proves otherwise, that's the way these recruits are going to view it. And once you get into year 3 and you don't have enough proof of concept on the field in terms of wins and losses, you'll be 60th in recruiting. It doesn't matter how good Hugh Freeze is at building relationships and how good of a salesman he is at selling himself in the program. And no matter what the stats were for Jarquez or KLS last year, elite recruits want to win, man. Winners want to win. And it's time for Auburn, and it starts versus Baylor, to come out there to change the perception of not only the national media and fans as a whole, but these recruits. Show these high school kids that this thing is going in the right direction, man. Auburn's got every opportunity to do it. And if you come out there week 1 versus Baylor, you can really have an opportunity to build up some momentum on the recruiting trail. Tell you guys about our memberships. You have the $3.99 a month JV squad and the $5.99 a month varsity squad. JV squad gets you members only live chat, member shout outs, priority reply to content, exclusive gifts, and early access to every video that we do that is not a live show. The varsity squad gives you everything JV gets. You get exclusive recruiting update videos, game day group chat, gameplay with you, and discounted merchandise. So if you're interested in how you can help us out here at the Uptempo podcast, go ahead and sign up for one of those today. There is also the super thanks. It's like the super chats that you can give during the live show. You can leave that after the show. So if you want to do that as well, you can do that. You can go over to the warreportshop.com, check out some up-tempo merch, buy you some of that. It really helps us out, man. Kind of doing my own thing here. We don't have the big sponsorships and all that, But our community here, our Up Tempo gang, you guys are the best. You guys keeping me afloat here, and I really appreciate y'all. So sign up today. The EA college football game drops soon. So if you're into gaming, we'll have a lot of exclusive content for you guys there. You can play me in EA college football 26 and all that. We can get a dynasty started up if you guys are interested in that. So there's a lot of options there for our members. When we do interviews, you can get your questions in. We'll let you know beforehand who we're interviewing, and you can, if you want to ask them a question. So a lot of options there, man. Please sign up for those if you're interested. And if you just want to help us support, man, in a free way, that thumbs up button, that sub, and sharing that out on social media, that all helps us out a ton. Thank you for watching. Little update on like live shows. It's just such a dead period, guys, that there's just not a whole lot to talk about. But here in a couple weeks, we'll kick back up the live shows. I think I want to start doing those Sunday morning around 8 a.m., 9 a.m., maybe 10 a.m. So somewhere in there, I'll give you guys an official announcement here in a week or two. So as we get closer to SEC Media Days, and the content kind of kicks back up, then we'll start doing the live shows again and getting here and interacting with all of you guys, because I know you guys miss those and love those. Just right now in this dead period and with the new work schedule, I'm kind of getting accustomed to these pre-recorded shows are a little bit easier for me to do. So thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you on the next one. It's Wardy Amigo, baby. I'm out.